I never shared with my son that I earned $40,000 a month, even though he always saw me living modestly. One day, he invited me to dine with his wife's parents, who were visiting from abroad. I chose to see how they would behave towards someone they might consider poor by pretending to be a naive and struggling mother. However, as soon as I entered the restaurant, everything shifted. That evening's events significantly shocked my daughter-in-law and her family in ways they had never expected. And trust me, they earned it. Let me explain how I arrived at that moment. Let me reveal who I truly am. Because my son Marcus, now 35, has never known the real story about his mother. To him, I was always simply the woman who left early every morning for the office, returned exhausted in the evenings, and cooked with whatever was in the fridge. Just another employee, perhaps a secretary, someone ordinary, nothing remarkable. And I never corrected his view. I never told him that I earned $39,900 each month, that I had spent nearly 20 years as a senior executive at a multinational company, signing multi-million-dollar contracts and making decisions that impacted thousands of lives. Why would I? Money was never something I needed to display like a trophy. I was raised in an era where dignity was felt inside, where silence held more value than empty words. So I kept my truth to myself. I lived in the same modest apartment for many years. I kept using the same leather handbag until it was completely worn out. I bought clothes from discount stores, cooked at home, saved what I could, invested wisely, and quietly became wealthy. Because real strength does not need to be shouted. True power watches quietly. I was watching closely when Marcus called me that Tuesday afternoon. His voice sounded different, nervous, almost like when he was a child and had done something wrong. "Mom, I need to ask you a favor. Simone's parents are visiting from overseas. It's their first time here. They want to meet you. We're having dinner on Saturday at a restaurant. Please come." Something in his tone made me uneasy. It didn't sound like the voice of a son inviting his mother. It sounded more like someone asking not to be embarrassed, trying hard to fit in and make a good impression. "Do they know anything about me?" I asked in a calm voice. There was a pause. Then Marcus hesitated and said, "I told them you work in an office, that you live alone, that you're simple, that you don't have much." There it was, the word simple, as if my whole life could be summed up by that one grim descriptor, as if I were a problem he needed to apologize for. I took a deep, steadying breath. "Okay, Marcus, I'll be there." I hung up and took a moment to look around my living room. The furniture is old but still comfortable. The walls are plain without any expensive artwork, and there's a small TV. Nothing here would impress anyone. At that moment, I decided that if my son thought I was a poor woman, and if his wife's parents were coming ready to judge, I would give them exactly what they expected. I would pretend to be broke, naive, and desperate. A mother barely getting by. I wanted to experience firsthand how they would treat someone with nothing. I wanted to see their true faces because I suspected something. I had a feeling Simone and her family might be the type to judge others by their bank accounts. And I trust my instincts. They never fail me. Saturday arrived, and I dressed in the worst outfit I owned. It was a light gray, shapeless, and wrinkled dress, the kind you find at a thrift store. My shoes were old and worn out. I wore no jewelry and not even a watch. I grabbed a faded canvas tote bag, pulled my hair into a messy ponytail, and looked at myself in the mirror. I appeared to be a woman worn down by life. Unremarkable. Perfectly ordinary. I entered a taxi and provided the address. It was a fine dining restaurant situated in the most exclusive part of the city, where the menu never displays prices, and each table setup costs more than an average person's monthly earnings. As the car moved through the streets, I experienced a strange feeling, an odd mixture of anticipation and sadness. I felt anticipation because I sensed something significant was about to happen. Yet, sadness lingered because part of me still hoped I was mistaken. I wished they would treat me kindly, look beyond my old clothes, and accept me without judgment, but another part of me, the one that had spent 40 years working among corporate sharks, knew exactly what was waiting inside. The taxi stopped in front of the restaurant. Warm lights glowed from within. A doorman in crisp white gloves greeted guests, and elegant people entered with ease. I paid the fare, stepped out of the vehicle, took a deep breath, crossed the threshold, and then I saw them. Marcus was standing beside a long table near the windows. He wore a dark suit, a white shirt, and polished shoes. He seemed quite nervous. Standing beside him was Simone, my daughter-in-law. She was dressed in a tailored cream-colored dress with gold accents, high heels, and her perfectly straight hair fell over her shoulders. As always, she looked flawless, but she wasn't paying attention to me. Her gaze was fixed on the entrance, her face tense and almost embarrassed. Then I saw them, Simone's parents, already seated at the table, waiting like royalty on their thrones. The mother, Veronica, was dressed in a fitted emerald green gown covered with sequins, with jewels on her neck, wrists, and fingers. Her dark hair was elegantly pulled back into a bun. She had that cold, calculating kind of beauty that can be intimidating. Next to her was Franklin, her husband, wearing a spotless gray suit, a large watch on his wrist, with a serious expression. Both of them looked like they had stepped right out of a high-end magazine. I moved toward them slowly, taking small steps as if I were afraid. Marcus saw me first, and his expression changed. His eyes grew wide, and he looked me over from head to toe. I noticed him swallow hard. "Mom, you said you'd be here." His voice sounded uneasy. "Of course, son. Here I am." I offered a shy smile, the kind a woman feels when she's not used to such settings. Simone greeted me with a quick kiss on the cheek, cold and automatic. "Mother-in-law, it's a pleasure to see you." But her eyes told a different story. She introduced me to her parents in a strange, almost apologetic voice. "Dad, Mom, this is Marcus's mother." Veronica looked up, observed me carefully, and in that moment I saw everything. Her judgment, her disdain, her disappointment. Her eyes swept over my wrinkled dress, my old shoes, and my canvas tote. She didn't speak at first, just extended her hand. Cold, brief, and weak. A pleasure. Franklin did the same, offering a weak handshake, a forced smile, charm that felt fake. I sat at the end of the table, the farthest seat from them, as if I were a guest who didn't quite belong. No one offered to pull out my chair. No one asked if I was comfortable. The waiter arrived carrying the elegant, heavy menus written in French. I opened mine and pretended I couldn't understand a word. Veronica watched me closely. "Do you need help with the menu?" she asked with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. "Yes, please. I don't know what these words mean." My voice was soft and unsure. She sighed and ordered for me. "Something simple," she said. "Something that doesn't cost too much." "We don't want to go overboard." The phrase hung in the air. Franklin nodded. Marcus looked away. Simone fiddled with her napkin. No one spoke. I just watched silently. Veronica was the first to start talking about general things, about the trip from abroad, how tiring the flight was, and how different everything looked here. Then subtly she began to mention money. She told us about the hotel where they were staying, going for $1,000 a night. She also mentioned the luxury car they had rented. Clearly, she described the stores they had visited. We bought a few items, nothing large, just a few thousand. She spoke while looking at me, expecting a response, hoping I would be impressed. I simply nodded. "How nice," I said. "That's lovely," she continued. "You know, Ara, we've always been very careful with money. We worked hard and invested wisely. Now we own properties in 3 countries. Franklin runs major businesses, and I oversee our investments." She smiled with a look of superiority. "And you, what exactly do you do?" Her tone was sweet, but there was a sharp edge to it. I replied softly, lowering my gaze. "I work in an office. I do a bit of everything: paperwork, filing, simple tasks." Veronica exchanged a glance with Franklin. "Ah, I see. Administrative work. That's good. It's honest work. All jobs deserve respect, right?" "Of course," I replied. The food arrived, large plates with small, artfully decorated portions. Veronica carefully cut her steak. "This costs $80, she said, "but it's worth it. Good quality is something you should pay for. You can't just eat anything, right?" I nodded in agreement. "Of course you're right." Marcus tried to change the subject, mentioning work and some projects. Veronica interrupted him. "Son, does your mother live alone?" Marcus nodded again. "Yes, she has a small apartment." Veronica looked at me with a pretend look of pity. "It must be hard, living alone at your age with not much support, isn't it? And does your salary cover everything?" I felt the trap closing around me. I replied softly, "But I manage. I save where I can. I don't need much." Veronica sighed heavily. Oh, Ilara, you're so brave. Truly, I admire women who face difficulties on their own. Although, of course, we always wish we could give our children more, a better life. But, oh well, we do what we can, she added with a subtle but harsh remark. It felt like a sharp blow. She was implying I hadn't been enough for my son, that I hadn't given him what he deserved, that I was a poor, inadequate mother. Simone was staring at her plate. Marcus was quietly clenching his fists under the table, and I simply smiled. Yes, you're right. Everyone does what they can. Veronica continued. We always made sure Simone received the best opportunities. She attended top schools, traveled around the world, and learned 4 languages. Now she has an excellent job and earns a good salary. When she married Marcus, we supported them quite a bit. We gave them money for the down payment on their house. We paid for their honeymoon because that's just the kind of people we are. We believe in helping our children. She looked at me with a serious expression. And you? Were you able to help Marcus at all when they got married? The question cut like a sharp blade. Not much, I answered. I did what I could, a small gift. Veronica smiled. How thoughtful. Every little detail matters, right? The amount isn't what counts. It's the thought behind it. And in that moment, I could feel anger beginning to rise inside me. The anger wasn't explosive, but it was there. It was cold and steady, like a river frozen beneath the surface. I took slow, measured breaths, maintaining a faint, cautious smile, allowing Veronica to keep talking. That's what she did. She'd chatter away, puffing herself up, showing off, and the more she spoke, the clearer it became how much she revealed about herself, the emptiness she carried inside. Veronica lifted her glass of deep red wine, swirling it gently, pretending she was an expert. This particular wine came from a renowned region in France and priced at $200 a bottle. When you understand quality, you don't go for the cheapest options. Do you like wine, Era? Only on special occasions, I answered. Usually I stick to the least expensive ones. I don't know much about these things. Veronica gave a condescending smile. Oh, don't worry. Not everyone has a refined palate. That comes with experience, travel, and education. Franklin and I have visited vineyards in Europe, South America, and California. We're quite familiar with such things. Franklin nodded in agreement. It's a hobby, something we enjoy. Simone is also learning. She has good taste, which she inherited from us. He looked at Simone with pride. She gave a faint smile. Thanks, Mom. Veronica turned to me. And you, Ara, do you have any hobbies? Is there anything you like to do in your free time? I shrugged. I watch TV, cook, take walks in the park. Simple everyday things. Veronica and Franklin exchanged a glance, one filled with unspoken judgment. How lovely, Veronica said. Simple pleasures can be charming, too. Of course, most people aim for more, seeing the world, trying new experiences, expanding their minds. But I understand that not everyone has those chances. I nodded. You're right. Not everyone has those opportunities. Just then, the waiter brought out dessert. Small plates of what looked like edible art. Veronica ordered the most expensive one, $30 for a tiny piece of cake about the size of a cookie. This is delicious, she said after taking her first bite. It has edible gold on top. Do you see those tiny golden flakes? That's a detail only the finest restaurants include. I ate my dessert, something simpler and more affordable. In silence, Veronica continued. You know, Ara, I believe it's important for us to talk about something now that we're all together. She looked up, her expression shifting to one of seriousness, a false sense of maternal warmth. Marcus is our son-in-law, and we care for him very much. Simone loves him, and we respect that choice. But as parents, our hope is always for the best for our daughter. Marcus stiffened. Mom, I don't think this is the right moment. Veronica raised her hand gently. Let me finish, son. This is important. She looked at me. Ara, I know you did your best raising Marcus alone. I understand it wasn't easy, and I genuinely appreciate everything you did. But now, Marcus is at a different point in his life. He is married. He has responsibilities now, and both he and Simone deserve to have stability. Stability? I asked softly. Yes, Veronica replied. Financial and emotional stability. We've helped a lot and we will continue to do so, but we also believe it's important that Marcus doesn't have unnecessary worries. Her tone was clear. It felt like she was suggesting I was a burden. Me, his mother-in-law. Simone looked down at her plate as if she wanted to vanish. Marcus's jaw was clenched. Worries? I repeated. Veronica let out a sigh. I don't want to sound harsh, Alara, but at your age, living alone with a limited income, it's natural for Marcus to be concerned about you, to feel responsible for you, and that's okay. He's a good son. But we don't want that concern to affect his marriage. Do you understand me? She asked. I nodded. Perfectly, I said. Veronica smiled softly. I'm glad you understand. That's why we wanted to speak with you. Franklin and I have been thinking about something. She paused for emphasis. We could assist you financially by providing a small monthly allowance, something that would help you live more comfortably without Marcus needing to worry so much. Of course it would be modest. We can't do miracles, but it would be a form of support. I stayed quiet, watching her, waiting. She went on, and in return, we would only ask that you respect Marcus and Simone's personal space. Don't seek them out too often, avoid pressuring them, and give them the freedom to build their life together without interference. How does that sound? That was the offer, a bribe dressed up as charity. They wanted to buy me off. They wanted to pay me to stay away from my son's life so I wouldn't be a nuisance or embarrass their treasured daughter with my poverty. Marcus suddenly lost his temper. Mom, that's enough. You don't have to do this. Veronica cut him off. Marcus, calm down. We're speaking as adults. Your mother understands, right? I picked up my napkin, calmly wiped my lips, took a sip of water, and let the silence settle. Everyone was watching me. Veronica with anticipation, Franklin with confidence, Simone with guilt, Marcus with worry. Then I spoke. My voice sounded different. It was no longer hesitant. It was no longer soft. It was steady, clear, and chilly. That's an interesting proposal, Veronica. Truly very generous of you. Veronica smiled with triumph. I'm glad you see it that way. I nodded. I just have a few questions to make sure I understand everything clearly. Veronica blinked. Of course. Feel free to ask whatever you want. I leaned forward slightly. How much exactly would you consider a modest monthly sum? Veronica paused briefly. Well, we were thinking around 500, maybe 700, depending. I nodded again. I see. 700 a month for me to stay away from my son's life. Veronica frowned. I wouldn't phrase it quite like that, I replied. That's exactly how you put it. She shifted comfortably in her chair. Ara, please don't misunderstand. We only want to help. Of course I emphasized help. How did you assist with the house down payment? How much was it? Veronica nodded with pride. $40,000? Yes, exactly. $40,000. Ah, what generosity. And the honeymoon? 15,000. Veronica explained it was a 3-week trip across Europe. Amazing. Unbelievable, I said. So, you've put about $55,000 into Marcus and Simone, I noted. Veronica smiled. Well, when you love your children, you don't hold back. I nodded slowly. You're right. When you love your children, you don't hold back. But tell me, Veronica, all that investment, all that money, did it buy you anything? Veronica blinked, puzzled. Like, did it earn you respect? I pressed on. Did it bring you genuine love, or did it just buy obedience? The mood shifted. Veronica's smile faded. Excuse me? My voice sharpened. You've spent the entire night discussing money, how much things cost, how much you've spent, and how much you have, but not once have you asked how I am, if I'm happy, if something hurts me, or if I need company. You've only calculated my worth, and apparently I'm worth $700 a month. Veronica paid. I didn't. Yes, I interrupted her. Yes, you did. Since I arrived, you've been measuring my value by your wallet. And do you know what I've realized, Veronica? I've realized that the people who only talk about money are often the ones who understand their own true worth the least. Franklin stepped in. I believe you're misunderstanding my wife's intentions. I looked directly at him. And what are her intentions? To pity me? To humiliate me during dinner? To give me charity so I'll go away? Franklin opened his mouth but said nothing. Marcus looked pale. Mom, please. I looked at him. No, Marcus, please don't. I've had enough of staying quiet. I placed the napkin on the table. I leaned back in my chair. My posture was no longer hesitant or reserved. I was no longer shrinking. I looked directly into Veronica's eyes. She held my gaze for a moment, then quickly looked away, feeling uneasy. Something had shifted, and she sensed it. Everyone noticed the change. Veronica, you mentioned something very interesting a moment ago. You said you admire women who face challenges alone, who are brave. Veronica nodded slowly. Yes, I did say that. Now, let me ask you something. Have you ever faced difficulties on your own? Have you ever worked without your husband's support? Have you ever built something with your own hands, without relying on your family's money? Veronica hesitated slightly. I have my own accomplishments. Like what? I asked sincerely. Tell me. Veronica adjusted her hair. I manage our investments. I oversee our properties. I make important decisions in our businesses. I nodded in understanding. Businesses your husband created, properties you bought together, investments made with the money he earned. Or am I mistaken? Franklin interrupted, feeling irritated. That doesn't seem fair. My wife works just as diligently as I do. I responded calmly, I don't doubt her dedication. But there's a difference between managing the money that's already there and creating it from nothing. Between running an inherited empire and building one step by step, don't you think? Veronica pressed her lips together, uncertain. I don't see where you're heading with this, Ara. Let me clarify, I said. 40 years ago, I was 23. I was working as a secretary at a small company. I earned the minimum wage. I lived in a rented room. I ate the cheapest food I could find. And I was completely alone. Marcus looked at me with surprise. I had never shared this much detail with him before. I went on. One day, I found out I was pregnant. I returned to work just 2 weeks after Marcus was born. A neighbor looked after him during the day. I worked 12 hours every day. I paused for a moment and drank some water. No one spoke. I wasn't just a secretary anymore. I studied at night, took courses, and learned English from the public library. I gained knowledge in accounting, finance, and administration. I became skilled in areas no one had ever taught me, everything on my own, all while raising a child alone. In addition, I was paying for rent, food, medicine, and clothes. Veronica was looking at her plate, and her arrogance was beginning to fade. And you know what happened, Veronica? I gradually moved up. From secretary to assistant, from assistant to coordinator, from coordinator to manager, and finally from manager to director. It took me 20 years. 20 years of relentless effort, sacrifices you couldn't even imagine. But I succeeded. And do you know how much I earn now? I asked. Veronica shook her head. $40,000 a month. The silence was complete, as if someone had pressed pause on the universe. Marcus put down his fork. Simone's eyes widened with surprise. Franklin looked stunned, and Veronica stayed frozen, her mouth slightly parted. $40,000, I repeated, every month for almost 20 years. That adds up to nearly $10 million in total earnings over my career. This doesn't include investments, bonuses, or company stocks. Veronica blinked several times, trying to process. No, I don't understand. You earn $40,000 a month? She asked. Yes, that's correct. I answered quietly. I am the regional director of operations for a large international company. I oversee 5 different countries. I manage budgets worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I make decisions that influence more than 10,000 employees. I sign contracts that you couldn't understand without lawyers. And I do this every day. Marcus looked pale. Mom, why did you never tell me? I looked at him with tenderness. Because you didn't need to know, son. Because I wanted you to grow up valuing effort, not just money. Because I wanted you to become a person, not just an heir, because money can corrupt, and I was determined not to let it do so to you. But then, Simone whispered, why do you live in that small apartment? Why do you wear simple clothes? Why don't you drive a luxury car? I smiled. Because I don't need to impress anyone. Because true wealth isn't about showing off. Because I've learned that the more you have, the less you need to prove it. I glanced at Veronica. That's why I came dressed like this tonight. That's why I pretended to be poor. That's why I acted like a woman who was broke and naive. I wanted to see how you would treat me if you thought I had nothing. I wanted to see your true colors. And, Veronica, I saw them clearly. I saw them perfectly. Veronica was flushed with shame, anger, and humiliation. This is ridiculous. If you earned that much money, we would know it. Marcus would know it too. Why would he believe you're poor? Because I allowed him to, I responded. Because I never talked about my job. Because I live simply. Because the money I earn, I invest, I save, I grow it. I don't spend it on flashy jewelry or showing off in expensive restaurants. Franklin cleared his throat. Still, that doesn't change the fact that you were rude or that you misunderstood our intentions. Really? I looked at him steadily. I misinterpreted when you said I was a burden to Marcus. I misinterpreted when you offered to pay me $700 to leave his life. I took your condescending comments about my clothes, my job, and my life the wrong way. Franklin didn't reply. Neither did Veronica. I stood up. Everyone looked at me. Let me tell you something that no one has ever properly told you. Money cannot buy class. It cannot buy true education. It cannot buy empathy. You have money, maybe a lot of it, but you lack what really matters. Veronica stood up angry. And do you? You who lied, who deceived us, who made us look foolish. I didn't make you look foolish, I answered coolly. You did that all by yourselves. I simply gave you the chance to show who you really are, and you did it brilliantly. Simone's eyes filled with tears. Mother-in-law, I didn't realize. I know. I cut her off. You didn't know. But your parents knew exactly what they were doing. They knew they were humiliating me, and they found it amusing, until they learned that the woman they belittled has more money than they do, and now they're at a loss for what to do with that information. Veronica trembled. You have no right. I have every right, I responded, because I am your son-in-law's mother, because I am entitled to respect, not because of my money or my job, but simply because I am a human being, something you seem to have forgotten throughout this entire dinner. Marcus stood up. Mom, please, let's go. I looked at him. Not yet, son. I'm not finished. I cast one last glance at Veronica. You offered to help me with $700 a month. Let me offer you a counter-proposal. I will give you $1 million right now if you can prove to me that you have ever treated someone kindly who didn't have any money. Veronica opened her mouth, then closed it again, saying nothing. That's right, I replied. You can't, because to you, people are only valuable based on what they have in the bank. That's the main difference between us. I have built wealth. You only spend what you have. I've earned respect. You buy it. I carry dignity. You carry bank accounts. I reached into my old canvas tote and pulled out a black platinum credit card. I placed it on the table right in front of Veronica. This is my corporate card with an unlimited limit. Use it to pay for the entire dinner, including a generous tip. Consider it a gift from a mother who is both broke and naive. Veronica looked at the card as if it were a venomous snake. Black, shiny, with my name engraved in silver. Aller Sterling, Regional Director. Her hand shook slightly as she picked it up. She turned it over and looked at it carefully, then turned to me. Her eyes no longer shone with that sense of superiority. Instead, there was something different, something I never expected to see. Fear. I don't need your money, she said, her voice trembling. I know, I replied. But I didn't need your pity either. And yet you offered it to me throughout the entire dinner. So take it as a sign of politeness or good manners, something you clearly didn't learn despite all your travels across Europe. Franklin gently hit the table. Enough? This has gone too far. You're insulting us. Respect? I repeated. How interesting that you're using that word now. Where was your respect when your wife asked if my salary was enough to get by? Where was it when she suggested I was a burden to my son? Where was it when she offered to buy my silence so I would disappear? Franklin pressed his jaw tightly. Veronica simply wanted to help, I corrected her. Veronica just wanted to control. She wanted to make sure that the struggling mother wouldn't ruin her daughter's perfect reputation. She aimed to remove the weakest part of the chain. The problem was, she picked the wrong link. I looked at Simone. Her head was lowered, her hands folded in her lap, trembling. Simone, I whispered gently. She looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm so sorry. I stopped her before she could finish her sentence. I didn't know I began, but she interrupted. Because you did know. Maybe you didn't know about my money, but you understood how your parents are. You know how they treat people they see as beneath them, and you did nothing to stop it. Simone sobbed. I wanted to say something, but they are my parents. I understand, I said softly. And Marcus is my son too. And yet I let him decide for himself. I allowed him to choose his life, his wife, his path, because that's how you show love, with freedom, not control or money or manipulation. Marcus moved closer to me. Mom, please forgive me. I am sorry for never asking, for assuming, for believing that you were. His voice faltered. I embraced him tightly. You don't need to apologize, son. I did what I did with a purpose. I wanted you to be independent, to value the right things, not to rely on me financially, but to build your own life. Still, you made me feel I had to protect you. Marcus said I needed to worry about you, that you were fragile. I understood, I replied. And it wasn't wrong for you to think that, because that's how you learn to care, to worry about others, to be compassionate. Those are lessons money can't teach. Marcus held me close. I'm sorry. I truly am sorry. Veronica remained standing, stiff, watching the scene with both confusion and restrained anger. This doesn't change anything. Finally, she said, You lied. You deceived us. You came here with hidden motives. You acted in bad faith. That's correct, I nodded. I took action. I pretended to be something I'm not. Exactly what you do every day, Franklin said. What does that mean? He asked. It means that you hide behind your money, your jewels, your trips, and everything you can buy. But inside, you are empty. You don't have deep conversations. You lack real interests. There's nothing you can offer beyond a bank account. Veronica let out a dry, bitter laugh. Coming from someone who lied all night, that's hypocrisy. Perhaps, I replied, but my lie revealed the truth. Your truth. And now you can't hide. Now you know I saw you, that I felt every comment, that I remembered every insult dressed as advice, and that I will never forget it. The waiter cautiously approached. Would you like anything else? He asked. Franklin shook his head sharply. Just the check. The waiter nodded and turned away. Veronica sat back down, feeling defeated. Her posture was no longer graceful. It was the posture of someone who had just lost something important. And it wasn't money, it was power. Ara spoke gently, with less force in her voice. I don't want this to ruin the relationship between our families. Marcus and Simone love each other. They share their lives together. We cannot allow this to happen, I interrupted her. What? Let this what? Let this destroy your plans. Let this reveal what you truly think. It's too late for that, Veronica. The damage has already been done. But we can fix it, she insisted. We can begin again. No, I said firmly, cutting her off. We can't, because now I see who you really are, and you see who I am. That truth can't be erased with empty apologies or fake smiles. You treated me badly, and you did it gladly, thinking you could get away with it. Franklin cleared his throat. You were the one who came here lying. You caused this situation. You're right. I nodded. I caused this because I needed to find out. I had to confirm what I already suspected, that you're not good people, that your money doesn't make you better. You are precisely the kind of people who look down on others for not having the same things. Veronica brushed away a tear. We are not bad people. Maybe not, I replied. But you are certainly not good, and there's a big difference between those two. The waiter returned with the check and placed it in the middle of the table. No one reached for it. Veronica looked at my black card still in her hands, then at me. I'm not going to use your card, she said. We will pay our own bill, as we always do. That's fine, I responded. In that case, keep the card as a keepsake, a reminder that things are not always as they appear, and that the woman you look down on all evening has more than you will ever have. And I'm not just talking about money. Veronica set the card down on the table. I don't want it. I don't want your moral lecture either. I pushed it back toward her. Keep it anyway, because something tells me you'll need it. Someday, you will meet someone like me, someone who hides their true self behind a false front, and you will make the same mistake again because people like you rarely learn. Franklin took out his wallet and pulled out several gold-colored, shiny credit cards. He selected one and used it to settle the bill. The waiter took the card and then left. During those quiet minutes in silence, no one spoke. The atmosphere was thick and uncomfortable. Simone quietly started to cry. Marcus squeezed my hand gently. Veronica stared blankly at the wall. Franklin checked his phone to avoid making eye contact. Soon the waiter came back. "Sir, your card was declined," he announced. Franklin looked up sharply. "How was it declined?" The waiter repeated, "Declined." "Do you have another form of payment?" Franklin's face flushed red. "That's impossible. That card has a very high limit. There must be a system error." The waiter nodded and said, "I can try again if you like." Franklin handed him another card. The waiter left once more. Veronica looked at her husband with nervous concern. "What happened?" "I don't know," Franklin said angrily. "It's probably a bank mistake. Maybe they temporarily froze the account for security reasons. It's something that sometimes occurs when you're traveling." I nodded politely, pretending to understand. Of course these things can happen. Such an inconvenience. The waiter came back again. "I'm sorry, sir." This card was also declined. Franklin stood up abruptly. "This is just ridiculous. I'm calling the bank right now." He hurried out of the restaurant. Veronica stayed seated, feeling ashamed and humiliated. "This has never happened to us," she whispered softly. "Never. What terrible timing," I remarked unemotionally. Marcus looked down at the bill. "Mom, I can—" he started. "No," I cut him off. "You're not paying for anything." I reached into my wallet, a simple old leather one. I then took out another card. It wasn't black. It was clear, made of heavy metal, a card that fewer than 1% of people in the world have. I placed it on the table in front of Veronica. She looked at it. Her eyes widened. She recognized what it was. "That's a Centurion card." "That's right," I replied. "An exclusive invitation from American Express requiring a minimum annual spend of $250,000, an annual fee of $5,000 just for holding it, and benefits beyond what you can imagine." Veronica said nothing. The waiter took the card carefully, as if it were something precious. He returned in less than 2 minutes. "Thank you, Miss Sterling. Everything is settled." "Would you like the receipt?" "No, it's not necessary," I said. The waiter nodded and left. Veronica kept her gaze fixed on the spot where the card had been. I stood up, grabbed my old wallet and canvas tote, and looked at Veronica one last time.